The trucks rolled to a stop just after sunset. Inside them sat a group of exhausted German women, clerks, auxiliaries and medics, captured during the chaotic retreat across France. They stepped down slowly, shivering, uncertain, their uniforms caked with mud and days of marching. American soldiers stood waiting, silent, watching them with the cautious professionalism drilled into them since basic training. Stay until the end, because what happened next became one of the most surprising moments in POW history. The women expected harsh orders. They expected shouting. They expected the cruelty their officers had promised would come the moment they fell into American hands. But instead, the sergeant checking their names heard something he didn't expect, spoken so quietly he almost missed it. "We ate nothing for a week." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from pure exhaustion. The American guards froze. Then, without a word, one of them turned and sprinted toward the mess hall. The German women had no idea what was happening. They braced themselves for the worst. What they received instead changed everything. The arrival. It was early winter, 1944, when the trucks finally stopped. Inside them sat a group of German women, clerks, medics, communication auxiliaries, captured after the collapse of several forward positions in France. They were exhausted, they were frightened, and they had been marched, transferred and shuffled for days with almost no food. When the tailgate dropped, the women hesitated. American soldiers were waiting. Big helmets, bigger coats, rifles slung low. Exactly what they'd been warned about. One private stepped forward and said simply, "You're safe now. Come, follow us." No shouting, no threats, just instructions. The women exchanged confused glances. Nothing about this looked the way their officers had described American captivity. They were led toward a long wooden building, the processing hall of a temporary POW camp. And inside that building, under flickering lamps, everything changed. As the women formed a line, an American sergeant moved down the row, checking tags, documents and names. That's when one woman, barely standing, leaned forward and whispered the sentence she had been holding in for too long. "We ate nothing for a week." The sergeant froze. Her voice wasn't demanding. It wasn't angry. It was the quiet, fragile voice of someone just trying not to collapse. American personnel looked at one another. Nobody spoke, but they all knew what that meant. These women weren't a threat. They were starving. "Get the cooks," the sergeant muttered. 2 minutes later, a corporal sprinted toward the mess hall. The Americans react. American policy, documented by the US War Department and the Geneva Convention, required all POWs, including women, to receive proper rations immediately. But following the rules was one thing. Seeing starving people in front of you was something else. Inside the kitchen, huge pots were already boiling for the evening meal. When the corporal burst in and explained the situation, the cooks didn't hesitate. "Load the trays now," one said. "They eat first." They slapped together what they had ready: biscuits, gravy thick with meat drippings, potatoes, boiled vegetables, cornbread and hot coffee. An improvised feast, but a life-saving one. The first meal. When the women were led into the mess hall, they stopped in disbelief. Warm air, the smell of real food, the clatter of metal trays, steam rising from pots. Some of the women had tears in their eyes, not because the food was rich or luxurious, but because it existed. A cook placed the first tray into the hands of the woman who had whispered the truth. She stared at the plate as if afraid it might disappear. Then she said softly, "This is for us?" The cook nodded. "You eat. No one's taking it from you." What happened next stayed with the American guards for the rest of their lives. The German women didn't dive into the food like animals. They didn't devour it. They sat, they straightened their spines, and they ate slowly, carefully, with dignity, but with a desperation visible in every bite. For the first time in days, they felt warmth spreading through their bodies. The shift in perception. After the meal, American medics examined them and found dehydration, exposure, malnourishment. The women expected punishment for being weak. Instead, they were wrapped in blankets and given places to rest. One American nurse remembered later, "These weren't soldiers in that moment. They were just young women who needed help." In the barracks, the stove glowed red. The German women warmed their hands and feet, speaking in low voices, still processing what had happened. Nothing in their training had prepared them for kindness from the enemy, creating a lasting memory. Over the next days, the women settled into POW routines, roll call, work details, mail checks. But what they remembered most wasn't the discipline. It was that first night, the warmth, the food, the moment their fear of Americans began to break. Years later, when some of them gave interviews in Germany, they recalled one thing vividly. The Americans fed us like their own. It wasn't propaganda. It wasn't exaggeration. It was simply what happened. The cooks who ladled gravy onto their plates never saw them again after the war. But those few hours inside a wooden mess hall became a memory carried across a lifetime. A moment when humanity briefly outweighed hatred. A moment when 4 whispered words changed everything. This is a true World War II story, because sometimes humanity is as strong as a weapon than conventional weapons in a war. Do you agree? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more true World War II stories.